Score, the podcast. The only show taking you inside the studios of the world's most celebrated composers and musicians.
From Hollywood this week on literally the Walk of Fame. We're right outside the door.
Literally, yep.
It's we crossed the stars walking into
Hollywood and Vine, or as
here.
Tom Waits used to call it, Heart Attack and Vine. That's where we are.
This is Score the Podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Holmes, back again with, you heard him, Robert Kraft.
Yep.
And today's guest, he's an Emmy-winning, Golden Globe-winning, Academy Award-winning film composer. He's just needs a Tony, and he'll be the EGOT.
EGOT, yep.
Known for, of course, the 2012 film that won the Oscar, Life of Pi. He also worked on Little Miss Sunshine, Moneyball, 500 Days of Summer, The Good Dinosaur, Capote, Boondock Saints, Ice Storm. I mean, there's so many huge...
And he's got a couple great ones coming up.
Yes, of course. The Ruth Bader Ginsburg biopic, which is titled On the Basis of Sex. And
that comes out in November?
Yes, starring Armie Hammer and Felicity Jones. And he's worked with many directors, including Terry Gilliam, James Mangold, Joel Schumacher, and Ang Lee, who he won the Oscar with on Life of Pi. And Robert, you have some stories that we're going to get into about Life of Pi.
Well, Mychael and I worked on a number of films together, 500 Days of Summer and Little Miss Sunshine, but also we had a pretty remarkable journey together.
It was a close call that ended up working out,
a
to say
very
the
close
least.
call.
I've heard you mention this a couple times before. I'm anxious to hear the rest of the story because I know that it's pretty interesting, and there's a lot of pressure involved. This is a film that went on to win an Oscar for Best Score, along with several other things, but a lot of anxiety around it.
Which is almost cinematic in itself, that the end sentence is, and then it won the Academy Award.
It had the perfect three-part arc of a, it started good, had some rocky moments, and then won the Oscar, and...
Perfect.
It's perfect. Also on today's show, an all-new episode of The Inside Track with Dr. Siu-Lan Tan, and this one's titled Music and Dialogue, and it's really interesting. It talks about how the composer has to really pay attention to where dialogue is, and also something really cool, which Dr. Siu-Lan Tan will explain a little bit, but the cocktail party effect, which you see a lot in TV and movies.
There's a great example of it that you'll hear coming up, but it's the idea of directing the viewer or the listener, the audience, to something by doing something with the sound. And when the music starts to disappear, or when the sound starts to disappear, you start to find one conversation taking place. That can do a lot of different interesting things.
Why it's called the cocktail party effect. If you're at a big party and there's 1 million people,
it's just
noise until you focus on somebody talking, and then all of a sudden you can hear them, and everything else kind of drowns out. And it's a really interesting idea, and it's used a ton in TV and movies. And she'll break it down. Yeah,
yep.
Really cool stuff.
I'm looking forward to hearing that and learning something.
We're also going to play Name That Score with Mychael Danna. And the topic today, Matt?
Academy Award, because Mychael Danna has won an Academy Award for Life of Pi, as we just mentioned.
Yes.
We are going to focus on Academy Award winners for Best Original Score.
Right on.
Going all the way back, I think, to 1964 or something like that.
Kind of a Mary Poppins year, if I'm guessing correctly.
Actually, that's not even the oldest one I have here. You'll have to stick around.
Oh.
I want to point out, too, we're going to post some pictures on our website for this episode, but the surroundings in this studio, it's a building that from what Mychael said, all of the other lofts in here are modern, but he came in here with a designer, and they literally turned it into this world collection of different things.
Yeah, how would you describe
I would think that this is what, if you walked into a gentleman's club, in a British gentleman's club in Mumbai or in Nairobi, Kenya.
Yeah, there's like a room
1890, you'd get this wood-paneled, big leather chairs, elephant tusks, and funny pith helmets, and lots of...
And there's a hookah in the other room with a bunch of different instruments. And
Yep.
Well, we are on Hollywood Boulevard, so there are a lot of hookahs down on the street. I'm sorry.
We'll put some photos on our website, score-movie.com/podcast.
Yep.
So we're going to jump into a topic really quick. There's a new trailer for the Halloween remake.
Yeah, that's right.
That movie's coming out this fall. John Carpenter, who you hear his music here, is not directing the movie, but is scoring the movie.
I think that's just awesome to know that he can have those two abilities, it's very rare. People don't realize.
There's not that many guys. We were talking about this a little bit before we started rolling here, but the Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood did,
He's done a few.
$1 Million Baby and a couple others. I got a chance to work on the movie Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Oh, yeah.
Really remarkable Searchlight film, and Ben Zeitlin directed it and co-composed the score with Dan Romer. And it's one of my favorite scores. It's really interesting.
So I want to ask you, Robert, the way this works, because you have been inside the studio system when I assume this type of thing has come up many times before. What do you look for if some director says, oh, also, I want to score my own movie?
What you look for is another composer very quickly. Because, first of all, directors are so cosmically distracted and overwhelmed with finishing the film that to say, oh, by the way, could we add another assignment? That's so rare. So it's really
quite an
surprising.
assignment, too. It's
really
not
surprising. Plus, in this era of filmmaking, the post-production aspect of the film and filmmaking is the most intense. I mean, they're all intense. You know, the film has 3 parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. I mean, the filmmaking process, but post now with all the special effects. So it'd be really, really strange for a director to step forward, not only to say he has the skills to score a film, which is a lifetime of experience to be able to actually do that, as we know from all the incredible talents. And we're in the studio of one of the great talents here, and I can't imagine. You say, hey, Mychael Danna, why don't you direct Life of Pi as well as score it? I mean, it'd be the same kind of flipping the script. So very, very rare. And
does it make your job easier or harder if the director is musical and, you know, because if they're doing the picture and they feel strongly about it, they're not going to say, you know, I don't really like the composer on the project, because they are the composer.
Right.
So is that a tougher conversation
I think
to
it'd be
have?
harder to say, let's fire the composer if it is the director.
Right.
But, you know, you've touched on a really interesting arena that I've had to go through many, many times, which is when directors say, you know, I'm a musician, or both say, you know, just before we start talking about music, I want you to know I played bass in my high school band. So I really
I
know
get
what
this. I kind of get how this whole
I know how it
composer
works.
thing-
It's usually those guys, forgive me, they're the worst. They are the worst with music because they think they know something and they don't allow the composer free
How do
rein.
you screen a director?
I was just gonna
who
say,
says
yeah.
this? Do you you know, you were the head of music Fox, so I assume that it's part of your job to vet that person in some way. But when they're the director, now granted, they may have to report back to the studio. That's kind of their boss in this whole thing. That's where the money's coming from usually. But what? Oh,
It's
I think
1.
a clock just went off. It must be 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
What types of thing do you look for when you're screening somebody to see? I don't know if they actually can't compose this.
It's like any first relationship. If you don't know the director, they have the opportunity to say the most boneheaded things in your first conversation, and if they do, first of all, when you're making a little movie at a studio, meaning you're not going with a $200 million movie where your choices of composers start to become fairly. You're not going to go for some, you know, my brother writes music.
Mm-hmm.
Can we have him? But when you're going for a smaller film, and the first thing they say is there any way we can get John Williams to score this? You realize they're completely clueless. They don't understand film music.
Budgets.
They just know, he's a good guy. We should get him. And I've been in that situation. You'd think that's surprising, but so what you hope is they kind of have a feel for the field that much. They say, here are the guys I like, here are the movies I like that they've done that are sort of in my zone, and you pretty instantly pick up, like in any relationship, they're, as the Jamaican friend of mine would say, they're clued up as opposed to clueless.
And speaking of Halloween, horror music doesn't really, or horror movies don't get the same respect as like a drama. You're not going to have an Oscar-nominated horror film. Usually, Get Out was kind of a horror film, and maybe that changed things a little bit. But why do you suppose that these films get overlooked a little bit? Is
It's
it
a
just because
funny-
most of them are corny?
It's a funny and interesting
Yeah, it is
arena.
a genre.
It is a
kind of
genre,
limitation.
and I think the easy answer is that comedic music is hard, and certainly romantic and dramatic music has a certain flavor that you have to hit the right tone. Horror, I used to say that you can score a horror movie by hitting the lowest note on the piano as the guy starts walking up the stairs. It just works.
Just sounds.
Boom. He's like, oh, geez, look at that. This is going to be scary. Also, with horror movies, you can use silence in a really effective way. And so the composing is, in many ways, where to leave music out so the audience goes, oh, no.
Like A Quiet Place.
Right.
Marco Beltrami.
Yeah, you leave stuff out. Of course, there are great horror scores, but it's not that you go hugely divergent musically with the ideas. It's usually pretty low. It's usually got some tension elements and some dissonance, and people know you're just signaling to people, either I'm going to fake you out and you're going to open the door and it's not the mad clown, it's the little girl is actually in there, and then I'm going to make you jump. So,
Right.
You're just playing with expectations, and that's a little simpler palette.
Than doing something big and
With feeling.
orchestral and
Yep.
Well,
with melodies.
John Carpenter certainly knows his way around the Halloween
That'll be
sound.
so interesting.
So we'll be looking forward to that. That, again, comes out this fall. Coming up after the break, we're here in his studio. You may hear the sounds of the city as we're in a high-rise
some
right here in
sirens,
Hollywood.
Trucks going up.
Yeah,
How many
there's a-
floors up do you think we are?
7,
7 floors.
based on the elevator.
We can see the Capitol Records building right out the window.
Oh,
Nice.
yeah. It doesn't get much more Hollywood than this. And
Right in the
coming
middle.
up after the break, we're going to invite him in. Mychael Danna, Oscar-winning, Emmy-winning, and Grammy-winning composer for Life of Pi, Little Miss
around.
Sunshine. We're going to talk all that coming up right after the break.
Hey, Matt Schrader here. We're back to the show in 15 seconds, but a quick thank you to everyone who's been telling a friend about Score the Podcast. We're one of the fastest growing entertainment podcasts out there right now, and that's thanks to you telling a friend. You're probably thinking of somebody else right now that enjoy the show. If it's safe to do so, hit pause and let them know about Score the Podcast. It helps keep this show going. Now back to the show.
Hey, welcome back. We're in the fabulous, beautiful studios of Mychael Danna, who many of you know, an Academy Award-winning, Golden Globe-winning film composer of many beautiful movies, some of which I actually had the pleasure of working with Mychael on, including The Extraordinary Life of Pi.
Oh,
and
so good.
we also did Little Miss Sunshine, Mychael. We worked on that one, and 500 Days of Summer.
And The Ice Storm. That's
well-
where we first met.
You know what? You actually remind me that when we met on Ice Storm, I remember Ang Lee, the great director.
I think we have a clip from Ice Storm.
Oh, good. We should play it because it was my first picture with Ang Lee, who has, of course, gamelan, which you taught me about. I learned a lot on this score. I learned an
So did
awful
I,
lot.
believe me.
I bet. I'd love to hear about it because the first thing that happened was Ang Lee mentioned he wanted to hire Mychael Danna. And I had to say, with all due respect, who is that exactly? And I was the head of music at 20th Century Fox, supposed to know all the composers, and I had not heard your name. And then he embarrassed me further. He says he does all Adam Agoyan's films, to which I had to say, who is that? Needless to say, in retrospect, I've now found out that you and Adam had made this incredible initial body of work in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me the story of how you and Ang met? Because I remember one little bit you told me.
I went to the University of Toronto, and also at the same time going there was Adam Agoyan. We were both involved in theater. I had no interest or, any inclination or opportunity to do film music up to that point. I was doing music for theater and having a great time. In that world, Adam Agoyan was also writing plays. And we got to know each other through those circles. And one day he said, I think I'm going to make a film. Do you want to do the music? And that's really how it started. And so we had no idea what film music was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of continued the experimental sort of attitudes that we were doing in theater music and carried that into our film world. And yeah, so that's how I began. I did a film called Exotica in
Right.
I think it was 94-ish. And for that score, I took a small recorder, portable recorder, a DAT recorder, digital audio recorder from back in that day, and traveled all through South Asia and just recorded any weird stuff like snake charmers, temples, any kind
Amazing.
of thing that I came across as I traveled around, and then brought it home and made a score out of it. And then Mira Nair was making a film called Kama Sutra. She heard
Right.
that score, and she asked me to come and work on that film in New York. While I was in New York, I was in the venerable old Brill building.
Sound One? Was that what
Yes, it was.
the
Sound-
mixing
Sound One.
facilities? Yeah.
And I was in a room, we were cutting together one of the cues, and I was sitting there with the music editor, and Alex Steiermark walked by the door, and I saw this guy kind of walk by fast and then kind of slowly come back and stick his head in and went, "What is this?" And I said, it's the score I did for Kama Sutra. And he said, "I've got someone I want you to meet. Give me your number." And so that literally was how. So Alex put Aang and I together, and Aang, liked my ideas, my approach to, and he was familiar with Adam's film work as well. So so we started working on this suburban 1970s story.
Such a great movie and
Yeah.
such a great score. I mean, that score was icy. I remember you used. It's interesting. You said you recorded instruments in Southeast Asia because there was a gamelan orchestra and these kind of very icy crystalline bells.
Yeah, and a Native American flute as well. Yeah, not what you would first think of as, when you're thinking of 1970s suburban Connecticut. And in fact, I remember Elmer, the venerable, great composer, who in his day and time broke barriers and brought jazz into composition. I remember reading an interview with him where he slagged my score and said,
Lovely.
"I don't understand why you would have, this weird Asian instrument in a 1970s setting." And I thought, okay, now I've really done it, because Elmer's mad at me.
I would think you've really succeeded. In some ways, you've not only gotten Elmer Bernstein's attention, little could he know that two things happened with that score, which are you met a director who you would go on to incredible work with.
Incredible.
And also that, needless to say, I don't know if we can trace it all back to Ice Storm, but gamelans, strange instruments, scores that aren't necessarily this kind of on-the-nose, they're in Washington, D.C., we're going to use a military band, because people started to, and I think in all scores, look at the Jerry Goldsmith stuff for Planet of the Apes. Did they have mixing bowls on Planet of the Apes to bang against?
Jerry's a guy who had that same attitude of, let's invent a whole sonic world that is right for the story. And, sometimes that's not the right thing to do. Sometimes a film needs superficial music that just addresses the scene at hand, the setting at hand, the expectations at hand. But sometimes it's better for the storytelling to dig some layers down and maybe make people have that dissonance in their head between what they're seeing and what they're hearing. The ice storm, okay, so it's this time of upheaval in Connecticut, and then watching the film, I was seeing the woods and these kind of very bizarre modern architecture houses that really seemed completely out of place in these woods. And I started thinking, the woods, where the native people used to live, and how did they live there, and what was their society like? How did they interact with each other? What were their families like? And then I started thinking, well, that might be a good thing for the music to say, to remind people that the way these people are living is not the only way that people live, and it's not even the only way that people lived in these very woods.
That's so
But you go back
lovely.
200, 400 years, there were native peoples living here, and wouldn't it be nice to just think about that and have the music just nudge you in that direction? And maybe it won't. Maybe for 4 out of 5 people, it won't have that effect, but it will. I believe that subconsciously it does have the effect. But by the way, the music has to work on the surface first. It has to. So those scenes of the woods, for instance, if we're talking about Ice Storm, and you have the Native American flute, on the surface it feels good. It feels right. It's kind of mysterious. It's kind of got this alluring quality to it, and a wistfulness and almost a sense of loss in it. But on an intellectual level or a conceptual level, it also is about this music was written by a people that used to live here. They used to have families. They used to have their way of interacting with nature and so on. So yeah,
There's a lot of research going on here.
And
It's
I
not
also
just
think
writing
it's
music,
a
which is really
composer-
cool.
It's a composer finding his palette for any particular film. And how do you find any artist finding the language, how that language evolves and develops to be the score is so interesting and so deep. I mean, there's something else that we worked on where you said sometimes when it's not right and when it's not wrong. I think you and I had an experience where you worked on something that was so right, so intrinsically wedded to the picture, and yet not everyone agreed. And I've always, I don't think you and I have ever had the chance to talk about a truly remarkable moment where the studio that
Do you know
was
what this
making
is? Michael's laughing. Yeah,
the
all right.
studio that was making Life of Pi.
He's dancing.
What was the movie called, Robert?
The movie was called Life of Pi, and it was a beautiful film directed by the genius Ang Lee, who had proven himself time and time again to be a great, sensitive director.
And it won 4 Academy Awards, including Michael's score.
Also, Ang, at one point, is the author of one of my favorite comments by any director. I said to him after we had talked about one particular cue of Michael's, the 3 of us were sitting in the room, Michael had played something, Ang said, I like that, but I think just this one moment, I'm wondering if you could turn it down just a bit so it doesn't overwhelm this particular moment in the film. And I said to him, you are so careful and thoughtful about the music. I'm so impressed. A lot of directors don't get that granular. And he looked at me with surprise and said, why wouldn't I be? It's like the costumes or the lighting or the dialogue or the casting. It's an equally important part of the film. And I thought, thank you so much, Ang, for showing respect for the music. Very few people, very few directors have that kind of bandwidth. So that leads us to the moment where I heard the score and I loved it, and our fearless leader came to hear it and nodded sagely, the head of the studio, a wonderful filmmaker and someone who I
And
knew.
Robert, for our listeners, Robert worked for Fox at the time.
I worked at Fox. I was president of music, and the chairman of the studio came to hear the film, and he, I know, was nervous about the film because it was a risky film for him to make, and the story had been very successful but not easily translated to picture. And so he came to hear the film, and he nodded sagely, and then he called me out in the hallway afterwards and said some version of, that doesn't work for me. And it
Not
was
mainstream enough? Not what was the
he
what was
said,
the concern?
he said there are too many sitars. Okay, so film takes place in India. I'm just saying that the particular cue. He said it's also all too slow. Well, there's a very dreamy sequence that starts the movie. And then he said, that guy that's composing it, not realizing that you had already scored many films at Fox that had been successful, you sure Ang has the right guy? So these are the kind of stomach aches that you get as an executive in a movie studio, and particularly stomach achy when you know you've just heard some of the best film composing you've heard in recent memory. I remember hearing the Life of Pi score and think, this is what I came to work for, Pi's Lullaby. So interesting and deep musically. Every aspect of it was art to me, art and music combined, not to mention the film. So, as you know, I had to come back out of that hallway and walk back into the control room where you and Ang were waiting a little anxiously. What did he say? But I think Ang got right to the point and said, I don't think he liked it, did he? I said, well, I wouldn't go that far. Mychael, you want to start packing this afternoon, or you want to wait till tomorrow morning? I remember we had one conversation, and then I'd love to hear what happened in that control room afterwards. I said something silly like, that first cue feels so slow. What if you added a shaker? It may kind of do a psychoacoustic trick that makes it feel faster. And then I sort of said, I feel that you're on the right track. I don't want to get in the way of it. Let me see if I can talk to the boss, and let's play it again for him in a week and see if maybe he appreciates it. And by the way, try that shaker if it works. What happened on the other side of that wall when I was...
Yeah, we put the shaker in.
I do remember he heard that same cue with the shaker and said, wow, this feels good.
It honestly did make a difference. And look, I mean, yeah, by the way, world, if you hadn't been there and your presence on that film was kind of this, there was an incredible amount of anxiety everywhere. I mean, we were making a film that had no model. It wasn't like, oh, we're just basing it on this movie that's already been made and was a success. This was a film that hadn't been made before, and we were figuring out how to do it. And we made a lot of mistakes. A lot of things weren't working a lot of the time. And so there was a lot of panic because, $100 million plus movie. Yeah. It was, and so, yeah, there was a lot of panic. Robert's presence was this calming kind of oil on water presence, which really was, honestly, I would have got fired if you hadn't kind of been there to just slow things down and just say, okay, yeah, we can make this, we can take those notes and bring them into the fold and keep it going. Which is what we did. And it did make it better. I mean, frankly, like almost all notes make the music better. They really do. Because if one person says, there's this, I have this concern, it's too slow. So then, you do have to look at it and think, okay, well, what could we do to have that, yes, there's something meditative about it, but we also do want the sense of youth and energy here too. So have we, do we need to nudge it over that way? And, honestly, we're joking about this, but the shaker actually did help a lot. And we were able to mix up some of the percussion and make it a little bit friskier, and it really helped. And but yes, it's a tough job, but Robert's job was to make sure that no hasty decisions were made, that the composer is still able to do his job without the mortar shells landing too close to his studio. And yeah, I mean, I have so many Life of Pi stories, I wouldn't even know where to start, but I'll tell you one story that so there was so much anxiety, there was a great deal of stress, and frankly, the music wasn't working for a long time. And I worked on that film, and Ang, like me, I mean, we're soulmates in this way. We love concept, and we love really digging deep to figure out how we're going to approach this storytelling. And he would literally call me from the set. And I have notes, and I still have them. Like for 2 years, he would call me just in the middle of the night and say something like, okay, it's the mother and the father is the earth or the sky, and the mother is the sea, And, so all these concepts, and somehow that had to all get into the music. So I had kind of 2 years of these intellectual, deep, spiritual discussions with Aang. And at first I tried to just write it all into the music. And it was just unlistenable. Honestly, for months, it was just so dense, and it was like J.S. Bach and too much. So at some point, Aang went, look, now you've learned all that. What we basically learned is, okay, you have all that knowledge inside you. Now stop thinking about it. Just write some nice music.
Right.
And all that will seep into it, but don't shove it down the viewer's throat. This is already a difficult film for someone to watch. Let's at least let's have some compassion, not only for Pi, but for the audience. And so that was that's how we ended up kind of where we ended up. So anyway, what I was going to tell you is that, there is this one, the pink skies scene where Pi has his first kind of evening, morning, and it's this absolutely beautiful sky.
The big reflection shot, right?
Yes, that's right.
That's
exactly.
Beautiful.
And so the night, and then just to make matters worse, my longtime orchestra collaborator, Nicholas Dodd, who conducts and has orchestrated many of my scores, and for a film like this, he's the guy I wanted to have. He was having heart surgery, and he was not available. So I had all these guys I didn't know, all these orchestrators. I went through 8 of them. A conductor I didn't know, and I was, so to add on all this anxiety, there was also that. And the next morning was the session, and we had our little bungalow at Fox, me and my crew. And I stepped out the evening before, and I looked up, and I swear to you, it was pink skies. Oh. And I called the guys out. I went, guys, come out. And we were just standing there, our jaws open, like, what?
That's awesome.
And I knew in my gut right then, all my fear fell away. I just thought, it's going to be fine. And I, not to be superstitious or something, beautiful. But I knew, and I had no more anxiety from that moment. Of course, I wish I'd had that moment 5 months earlier, but yeah, I knew it was going to be fine, and yeah.
I think what I love about that
was your Richard Parker looking down.
I think what I love about that story is that with all that went on, you wrote the music that what you didn't feel worked, and you had to kind of reassess how to do it, and Nicholas Dodd not being available, and different orchestrators and different conductors and all that, and everything anxious, and it ends with this sentence. And the winner
I was just going to say that.
I mean,
was that the moment?
Isn't that a great
What was that
button?
like? After all that.
It's a great button for the end of all that anxiety.
It is, and I think from the outside, that would seem like the natural button, but for us on the inside, what happened was that we had years of struggle. That movie was just something we lived, and we literally felt, like Pi, just adrift and bereft, and hallucinating and not sure where we were, and things. We would have these screenings for ourselves, and we would the lights would come up, and we'd all be, oh my God, we're screwed. This is not working. Nothing's working. The editing's not working. The visual effects aren't working. The music's not working. And we just, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and figure this out. That went on for months, and it believe me, you just have no idea what a bad feeling that is, of just being adrift and not being able to figure it out. And Aang is one of the smartest filmmakers who has ever lived, and he was working his hardest. And finally, there was this sudden breakthrough where we suddenly had a screening, and it was maybe a month before we recorded. It was very late in the process, where the lights came up in the end. We went, oh, this actually might work. I felt something that time. And then I remember when we finished the film and watched the final dub, and that was the button for us. Literally, tears were shed. We just realized, we did it. It didn't seem to us like it was possible.
I think
And
it's a
we did it.
perfect evocation of, particularly, it's not only the artistic process, but the filmmaking process, which is that it is so hard to get a film to work. It's so hard to see the final product. You need a director like Ang. You need collaborators like you to stick through it and not give up and say, hey, that's the best I got. And to think that it went through all those iterations, including those dark moments where it wasn't working. And I think I can share with you something you might not know. That was my last film at Fox.
Yeah.
I actually...
It's a pretty good way to go out.
It felt like
You wandered off into the jungle.
I really did wander off. I thought it was time, TTG, time to go, and there was a wonderful moment because we all walked through that Life of Pi difficult moments together, where I was watching the Academy Awards a few months later and thought, it's like that scene in Chariots of Fire where the guy stands up and puts his hand through his boater, and the guy wins the race and he hears about it on the radio and he goes, oh, yeah. I remember standing up wherever I was when Life of Pi won Best Score and going, right on. It was just such a good feeling.
Yeah, there was a lot of circles that closed, like strange karma and whatever you want to call it. Another interesting thing that happened that night, speaking of buttons, is that, and I've worked with Ang on many films, one, the forces of darkness overwhelmed, and I did get fired off a film that Ang did.
Amazing.
And involved in that film was our good friend James Seamus, who I then, after I won my Oscar and I went to the green room and came out to the bar where I had to definitely visit quickly. Yeah. And there was the show's still going on. There's no one at the bar except one guy, James Seamus.
Poetry.
And so James and I,
Did he look at you soulfully and say, forgive me?
Oh, no, well, no, it was just, it was just perfect. Yeah, we just laughed and it was a great moment where we all felt like everything came around to where it was supposed to be and everything happened the way it was supposed to. And it's just like on a film like Pi, you just can't help but think these, deep thoughts. So, but yeah,
it all worked out.
Ooh, what a block.
Yeah.
That was some cool stories.
We're running a
Super
little
cool.
long, but
We're going to take a quick break. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk to Mychael about collaborating with his brother, Jeff. But first, the inside track.
The Inside Track with music psychologist Dr. Siu-Lan Tan.
Imagine getting ready for the big reveal at the end of a movie. The detective spins around and announces, and the murderer is Reginald. Not being able to hear the most important line in a movie would be intensely frustrating. That's why important pieces of dialogue in film either have no underscoring, or where there is music, a space is created for the speech to shine. In this scene, for instance, John Williams' music builds and gets our attention. And then, E.T. speaks.
I'll be right here.
And when E.T. has finished speaking, the music comes back in like an exclamation point. Sometimes music plays softly behind the dialogue. In Hidden Figures, a complex math equation sounds lyrical as the music plays up the rhythms and melody of the voice.
If the product of two terms is 0, then common sense says at least one of the two terms has to be 0 to start with. So if you move all the terms over to one side, you can put the quadratics into a form that can be factored, allowing that side of the equation to equal 0.
This child will grow up to be Katherine Johnson, one of the brilliant African-American women hired as mathematicians for the U.S. space program. The melody that was playing behind her voice as a child is Katherine's theme. Lastly, here's an example that illustrates an interesting psychological phenomenon.
What's that?
That's a Christmas present from a very dear friend of mine.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right. That's right. Attaboy, Clarence.
That was the closing scene from It's a Wonderful Life. As soon as the dialogue begins, the singing gets softer and then louder again after the dialogue ends. But this should seem a little strange because the song is being sung by people standing a few feet away from George and his family. Yet it gets softer and then louder again, although nobody has moved. So why don't these shifts in the loudness seem odd to us? Psychologists use the phrase the cocktail party effect to refer to how we hear a cacophony of speech and other sounds when we arrive at a cocktail party, until we zero in on a particular conversation. As soon as we tune in to one speaker, that voice becomes foreground in our attention, and the other conversations will seem to fade down into the background. If we were standing inside the scene in It's a Wonderful Life, when we shifted our attention to George's family, it would seem to mute the singing.
What's that?
That's a Christmas present from a very dear friend of mine.
And when we turned our focus back to the crowd, the singing would rise up again into the foreground.
That's right. Attaboy, Clarence.
So the audio in the scene doesn't portray an objective reality, but rather our psychological and subjective experience of sound, making the effect seem quite natural. The crowd singing is a powerful musical and emotional backdrop for this closing scene, which celebrates people uniting together. So cinema privileges the voice, and music often has to stay out of the way of the dialogue. However, when treated effectively, the interplay between voice and music can elevate dialogue, making it much more emotionally resonant and enriching the musical qualities of the voice.
Dr. Siu-Lan Tan is a leading researcher in the study of film music and the author of many books, including her latest, Psychology of Music, From Sound to Significance, available now at score-movie.com/podcast.
Welcome back to Score, the podcast. We're sitting here with Oscar-winning, Golden Globe-winning, Emmy Award-winning. There's a lot there.
It's a lot of winning.
He's decorated.
Winning.
He's Mychael Danna, and what a great first block there, talking all about Life of Pi and those stories, and it came full circle. I want to talk to you about working with your brother Jeff, of course, another fantastic composer. You guys worked on the Good Dinosaur together, and that score has such more of a traditional sound to it than some of your other big scores. I'm wondering, here's a little clip of the Good Dinosaur there. I'm wondering, does that come from Jeff, or was that a studio thing? How did that evolve?
Well, again, I think as we were talking about in the first block, it's all about the story, and I mean, honestly, I think any composer can write any kind of music you want, and I can write, brainless, superficial music, or I can write profound, or I can write choral or traditional with fiddles. Comedic, like really you can do, and that's what is so fantastic about what we do, is that you do get to play in all these different worlds.
You're not stuck in a genre.
No, and I mean, I've been really lucky, and I've worked hard on doing that with my career, is not to end up pigeonholed into one particular road of music making. But my brother and I have played all our lives together, and we have very similar tastes, but we're two intersecting circles that there's some part that overlaps, but he when we were young, he was a guitar player, I was a keyboard player. So we played in bands. So he's got more that side of things, and a lot of on the Good Dinosaur he plays a lot of, he's got this huge collection of world strummy instruments, and so he plays a lot of those in that. But a lot of, if you heard some of the pieces, you might think like, oh, this one that's all plucky instruments, it must be Jeff, but actually it was me. And then, oh, this big orchestral one must be Jeff or me, but actually it's Jeff. And I don't know. So honestly, like sometimes we forget. I'm standing on the stage listening to the orchestra, and I'm like, damn, Jeff, this is a beautiful melody. It's like, dude, you wrote that one. It's like,
that's so nice.
Okay.
Are you guys competitive at all? I know, like me and my brother, if we're doing anything in the same avenue, it gets super competitive. Do you guys go at it at all?
Absolutely. Like all, brother collaborators. It's funny, by coincidence, I'm reading this bio of the Wright brothers right now. And yeah, they would scream at each other all the time. But, end of the day, we have so much doesn't need to be said because we just have all this common background. We just one word and we know like a whole world. So, the bottom line is that I hugely respect what he brings to it, and he hugely respects what I bring. And like I said, they're intersecting circles. There's things that he does that I know he can do far better than me, and vice versa. But at the end of the day, like you find this great sandbox to play in. You want your brother to come in. Once he's there, you start fighting over toys and knocking down each other's castles. But it's the greatest place to play, like on an orchestral stage, and who wouldn't want their brother there?
That's so nice. It makes me.
It's so rare too. It's such a small world of composers, and to have two brothers both doing big things, that must be a proud moment was a proud moment for your parents when that. Yeah,
it is for sure, and I think, although I have to tell you, my mom yelled at me when I was just starting my film career, and Jeff was still in a band, and she yelled at me like, now look what you've done. Look, he's not even going to college. He's going to play in a band. Like you had to like get him into music. So
look what you've done.
Yeah.
God.
So, no parent is ever going to like be delighted that their kid became a musician. But
my parents were just mystified. But I think.
I can't imagine young Robert.
Young Robert was sitting on a piano bench at 5 years old, so there was no surprise to them that I never did anything else. I was the guy that climbed on, at parties, at camp, whatever it was in high school. Get Robbie to play. So I'd play Beatles songs and, Stevie Wonder, and I'd entertain.
Leading the campfire?
Yeah, exactly right.
There's an interesting scientific thing to you and your brother, and that you come from essentially the same background. There's a certain kind of control element, if you think of it as a science experiment, and you both have come out of that with slightly different musical visions of the way that sound should be put together. Have you I don't know, thought about that at all? Have you identified this is the way Jeff does something, this is the way I like
I believe me, I am very aware of how he looks at things, and he's very aware of how I look at things. And I think, it really does help. I look at the scores we've done together, and I'm super proud of them. I feel like, the work just got elevated. He has certain things that are really important to him that I let slip through the cracks sometimes, and he'll remind me, no, you gotta, and okay, I'll rewrite the B part, but so it really does make it better, and there's definitely competition, but look, what we do in film every day is collaborate. Like if you're not a good collaborator, then you're in the wrong business to begin with. So we already do it all day, so we might as well keep doing it when we're writing the music as well.
It's always good to have a sibling or somebody in your family too, because my brother's not going to be a yes man. If something's not good, he's like, that's terrible, you got to fix that. So sometimes you need that. Do you bounce stuff off him, and he's like, Mychael, come on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we try to be respectful, but yeah, sometimes like, man, that's just not, hey man, I just wrote this great theme for this character. Check it out. And it's like, honestly, it's just not doing it for me. Like, try again. I mean, that
Sure.
It does happen. And
Yeah.
you know what? Then
You
the
need
theme is
that.
better.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, bottom line, that's what we always feel like it's going to make it better. And yeah, it's painful. It's always painful. Although, God, I'm so used to it now that, I'm numb. But it's painful when people tell you your idea sucks.
Yeah.
But, I've kind of come to terms with that so long ago that having my brother say it is fine.
Better
Probably easier.
Better one person than the masses.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd rather go into the meeting with Jeff saying, you know what, this is a really good theme. And I go, yeah, it's a really good theme. We go into that meeting, we feel strong about it.
Yeah.
And so I love writing by myself, and I love collaborating too. I wouldn't want to give up either of them, but yeah, if we have something coming up, I do look forward to that.
That's so nice to hear. One of the things that we just wanted to know a little bit about, because I think you may be our first Canadian that we've asked a question of. Is there any difference that you bring to this that you feel you can trace back to being Canadian? Is there an American
You know
approach
what? Let's
to film
hold
music?
this. Let's do this as our last
Got
question
it.
after our game.
Thank you.
Because that's a good one. I
So
want
we
to
end
end
with
on.
full circle.
Okay.
Did he
What
have
a
a
tease,
nice
Matt.
button?
We'll ask
Did he
Matt
have a
just
nice
rolling
button
through
there?
it.
Okay.
We're going.
Oh, good.
So we're going to take a quick break then, and then when we come back, we're going to play Name That Score, and then we'll wrap with that question. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, Matt Schrader here, director of Score, a film music documentary. For the latest news from the film music world, follow us on Facebook. Just search Score, a film music documentary. Or let us know who you want to hear next on the show on Twitter, @ScoreThePodcast.
We're back here in Hollywood with Mychael Danna,
We're
Oscar
really
winning.
in Hollywood.
Yeah,
We're right near Hollywood and Vine.
we literally stepped on the Walk of Fame to get into the studio, so it doesn't get much more Hollywood than this.
I just don't understand why everyone isn't here. When I came from Canada, I assumed, well, Hollywood is where you're supposed to be, right? So I
that's
came to
where they make
Hollywood and
movies.
Vine, and that's where we are. Yeah.
It
Well,
is kind of confusing.
I saw
The tourists-
Spider-Man and a Wookiee down on Hollywood Boulevard, so clearly there's certain
I
Hollywood
think
stars
this must
here.
be the hub of all
That's right.
all the entertainment.
Yeah, and there's Drunk Iron Man.
Drunk Iron Man.
It is a circus out the window every day. It's the greatest. I love Hollywood so much. It is the greatest place on earth. It's so insane.
I do think you've just given the title to a great episode of a TV show, which is Drunk Iron Man. I think that could be either Drunk History is Drunk Superheroes. We could do that.
Yeah.
So we got Name That Score. We ready to rock it?
I think so. It's the game that is sweeping social media. Let's do it.
It's heavy.
Get ready to play Name That Score! The film music game where a perfect score means you, yes you, could be a winner. Now let's play Name That Score! All right, we're all fired up. So the theme of today's game is Academy Award-winning scores.
Appropriate.
Academy
Very
Award-winning
appropriate.
films because, of course, Mychael Danna,
Our
Life
first
of Pi.
Oscar-winning guest, by the way.
I believe
That's
so.
true. Yeah, it is.
Should we put the award?
Yeah, I think so. Either put the award there, or if this podcast doesn't get some more subscribers, hint, hint, it may be our last Oscar-winning guest because we're gonna have to.
We're gonna need a sad score.
So
Mychael.
please share with a friend.
Yes, please subscribe.
Thanks for building that
Actually,
right
you know
in there.
what? Right now, pause, hit subscribe, maybe rate and review, and then
Love that. Actually,
All right, we're
We've
back.
been
Thanks.
so happy with the way people are finding
Yeah.
this podcast. It's been quite remarkable.
yes,
so
thank you to all the listeners.
Let's play the game.
So we play 5 famous film scores, but in reverse. Robert, Kenny, and Mychael will all pick from 3 multiple choice answers. The last question is worth double. If anybody gets all 5 of these right, is that you, Robert?
It's amazing.
If anyone gets all of these right, we give away a prize on our...
Oh, this is amazing.
there it is. I was looking for the drop. We give away a prize on our Twitter account, @ScoreThePodcast. Just mention #NameThatScore to enter. That's all you got to do. And today's theme again, Academy Award winners for Best Original Score.
Wow. Thank you.
Very nice.
Our audience is excited about that. So we will start with question 1, and I give you the options first so that we can identify these. These are the 3 choices. I'll give you the year and the composer as well, in case that helps. Question number 1. Is this from Beauty and the Beast, 1991, Alan Menken, Titanic, 1997, James Horner, or The Grand Budapest Hotel, 2014, Alexander Desplat?
Robert.
Robert's got to go first.
I'm going Beauty and the Beast because it's got a whole Beauty and the Beast vibe to it. I can't imagine it being either of the other two. So, Alan Menken, BATB.
Beauty and the Beast.
Thank you so much.
Kenny's going Beauty and the Beast.
I don't think...
Beauty and the Beast,
I
Titanic,
think ultimately,
Grand Budapest
with
Hotel.
the process of elimination, I'm going to go with Beauty and the Beast more than anything.
Maestro?
Should I be spoiler here?
If you need to hear it again, we could play it again.
So let me hear the options again. Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, 1991. Titanic, 1997. The Grand Budapest Hotel, 2014.
I mean, I'm going to join the crowd. Beauty and the Beast.
All right. Everybody gets the first one.
Oh, wow.
Oh, much more
That's the big
identifiable
theme.
forward.
Was that really difficult the other way around?
It had that Beauty and the Beast vibe to me.
I think it just didn't have any of the other movies. The
Yeah.
Titanic one
Yeah.
is so obvious.
And Fantastic Mr. Fox also had a sound.
True. Yeah.
Number 2.
Question 2. Is this from Atonement, 2007, Dario Marianelli, The Grand Budapest Hotel, again, 2014, Alexander Desplat, or The Social Network, 2010, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross?
Oh, man.
You want to hear the options again?
I got him.
Ooh.
We got a confident craft here.
I think so. I'm going way out on a limb. Ready? Socializing, networking, Trent and Atticus. That's my vote.
Robert's going The Social Network, 2010.
I feel like I'm Robert crafting here, but I'm going to go with Social Network also.
Kenny's going to follow up on that. What do you think, Michael?
I mean, how can I go against these two great minds? Social Network.
Are you sure, Michael?
Yes.
The options again.
Wait a
Atonement,
minute.
Oh, that's so...
Grand Budapest Hotel.
I think it's Atonement.
Is that what you're going with?
That's the only other possible
I
one.
had to guess mine because I'm not sure I'm that familiar with Dario's score for Atonement, so I thought...
There's a lot of piano in it, as I recall. It's like a piano score.
I'm guessing...
Matt has done this a couple of times, and every single time he does it, it's a different answer. He's never steered us wrong.
Wait. It is Atonement. I absolutely, because I hear a typewriter in it.
That's what I was
Yes.
thinking too.
That's what it is. It's not a synth. It's a typewriter.
What do you think, Robert?
Social Network.
He's sticking with The Social Network. Robert, guess what you get?
Trent,
it is-
Atticus,
it is from
buddies.
Atonement.
Where were you?
There's typing in Social Network, but
Yeah, it was.
this is typewriter. This is good old fashioned.
This is the typewriter Facebook
You know what?
movie.
I gotta confess, I let you guys have that because I thought, I'm just gonna give you an advance and I'm coming around from behind.
That was very generous
Number
of
2.
you.
Yeah.
All right, question number 3.
He's been winning too much lately.
Winning.
Yeah, he has had a little bit of a hot streak lately.
Hot streak.
Question 3. Is this music from La La Land, 2016, Justin Hurwitz, Mary Poppins, going way back, 1964, The Sherman Brothers, or Emma by Rachel Portman?
Equally identifiable backwards.
Equally
Yeah.
frontwards and
Yeah.
backwards.
That's straight up La La Land.
Straight
Straight
up.
up.
Justin 3-4 time. Doom chop chop. Doom chop chop.
Did you say Justin?
Jordan Hurwitz?
Not
That's his
Jordan.
brother.
Great score.
Jordan
I
Bieber.
think
We got to see that live at the Hollywood Bowl. That was a good one.
I saw it too. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Didn't we see it together?
Could have. You're right. My memory doesn't
rude.
go back
So rude.
more than about a week.
It
So.
wasn't a memorable night,
I
apparently.
think that's right, yeah. Question 4, is this from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, 2000, Tan Dun, Slumdog Millionaire, 2008, Era Ramen, or Life of Pi, 2012, Mychael Danna?
Okay, first of all,
I'm
I'm not
looking at
even
Danna.
touching it. I'm waiting for Michael to go.
Everybody's looking at you, Michael, so you don't give it away if you know.
One more time.
One more time, yeah.
Oh, I know where it's from.
Don't say anything yet. We got to make Kenny. Maybe Kenny go first since
I'm gonna
he
go
pulled.
with Life of Pi.
Kenny's going Life of Pi.
Only because Robert, there was a Little Mermaid question a few weeks ago, and he got it wrong, and he worked on the movie. So Michael's sitting right here. I'd rather guess and get wrong than
And be embarrassed in front of.
That's
I also am literally drafting off Michael, sort of going, "Oh, I know where that is." I thought,
in the
hope
movie.
so. I'm saying Life
gave
of
that
Pi
away.
too.
You're
yeah.
on Life
I'm
of Pi
sorry.
too?
I did
No,
give that
thank
away.
you.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's
You wrote that?
Life of Pi. Yeah, but it's kind of amazing that I didn't know right away. It's
backwards,
very
too.
interesting.
So you
Points
don't
for
make,
everybody.
You don't make a point of listening to your scores backwards. Is that what you're saying?
It's a little bit longer clip forwards here.
Was this the place in the movie that you thought it was?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Thank
Took
God.
a moment.
Okay. This is very important to me, question 5, because it's 2 points and it gives me the opportunity to tie or
It is.
win.
So our score right now, Robert has 3. Kenny and Michael both have 4 points. This last 5th question is worth double. So if you guys both screw it up, that means, Rob, was that you making that?
Isn't that nice?
Oh. We'll have to use that as a draw. All right.
Kind of a Life
Don't
of Pi
break
sound.
anything on the
Yeah,
microphone.
Thank you.
All right, so question 5. Is this music from Out of Africa? 1985, John Barry. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, Maurice Jarre. Or Star Wars, 1977, John Williams.
Well, I think I know this just because it's your favorite score.
What's that, Kenny?
Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh.
Or Orans, as he was called by his Arab brothers.
David Lean directing the beautiful Lawrence of Arabia.
You're going with that too?
I am.
And Michael? Everybody's saying that. All right.
That's a social media winner.
It
Nice.
is. It's a social media winning answer.
It's so
from
great.
Both Kenny and Michael, since they're Robert got it too, but he missed one earlier, so that one
Yeah.
doesn't count.
How unfortunate.
I do
Tiebreaker?
have a tiebreaker. Do we want to
Uh-oh.
hear this?
Yeah.
So we can see this is Kenny against Michael, really. is what
Oh,
this is.
man.
But we already have our winners.
Can I signal, like give him some high signs? We'll try.
I don't know. You didn't get all of them right, so we better just go with
throw him off.
Here we go. Question 6. Is this from Dr. Zhivago, 1965, Maurice Jarre, The Right Stuff, 1983, Bill Conti, or Up, 2009, Michael Giacchino?
Who goes first?
Oh.
We have the clock scoring
That
the
means-
drama here.
That means you're right.
I'll let our
Top of
guest
the hour.
go first.
I mean,
I have my choice. I'm not going to pilfer.
You might you might be tricking us here, but I'm going to say Right Stuff.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
1983, Bill Conti. Okay. Kenny?
That was my choice also.
You guys don't want to make it interesting and pick something different?
Up.
Robert says up. It
I'm
is
not-
The Right Stuff.
Was that a burp?
It's a really cool score that I think gets forgotten sometimes, but it's a really good one.
So royal.
And very just American.
I love the way
American-
he inserted that police siren in there.
Kind of amazing. It gives it a
Yeah.
whole tension.
Right. These are the sounds of Hollywood.
Right. There's the downside of being in the middle of everything is you're in the middle of everything. So our big winner, we have two of them this week. It's Kenny Holmes and our guest Mychael Danna.
What happened, Robert?
You know, I felt that it's good sportsmanship to let others win sometimes.
That's thoughtful.
I find it just, it's called taking the dive. You know, they do it in boxing. You just take a dive, let the other guy win.
All right.
So, Mychael, I wanted to ask you, I came up with this, and I think you've talked about this maybe a couple times before, but there's the idea of the way that an upbringing changes kind of a musical perspective and the way you hear things. You've talked before about kind of the Canadian musical sentiment maybe being a little bit different from that of a lot of American composers. Can you kind of elaborate on what you hear as the distinction there?
The great thing about Americans is that they embrace the disruptors. They embrace change. They embrace people that are revolutionaries. In Canada is a much more conservative country in that way, and you can see from the birth of the country, it was a colony that never rebelled, basically. Like, well, okay, we'll pay those taxes, we're not going to put your tea in the harbor.
Yeah.
We'll follow the rules. And so there is that is a Canadian thing, to kind of follow the rules and also to be a little distrustful of success and a little distrustful of people that call attention to themselves, kind of the opposite to Americans in both those ways. So I love that here, that people really are, when I came here and I was starting out, people were like, "Oh yeah, you're a new guy. That's cool. We want to meet you. Like, what do you do? Oh, that's different. That's amazing." Whereas in Canada, there would definitely be more reticence to that. So that's the thing I love about America and why I live here now, that it's a country that really does do it better than anybody else. No one works harder, no one strives for excellence harder than Americans in the world that I've ever seen, and that's why I'm here, because that's my style too.
I really liked one thing, and I think it's a perfect button for this week's episode, that you used a word that we forget about musicians and music. You said in Canada you get a chance to play, and that's the operative verb for music. You're playing music, and there is so much pressure here to make a pop hit or make a successful movie. So the very fact that you feel that your first part of your career was really playing, and you've used the word sandbox, I think that's a wonderful and overlooked aspect of growing as an artist. Mychael Danna, thanks so much for being our guest on Score the Podcast.
Yes, we do want to remind our listeners as well, as we do every week, to go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, rate, and review if you like what you're hearing. And be sure to tell a friend, too. We're growing, and we're growing fast, and that's because you're helping us spread the word. Oh, we had a winning week because Mychael and I won the game. So make sure to go to @ScoreThePodcast on Twitter and use the hashtag #NameThatScore. We've got some autographed Life of Pi soundtracks here. Thanks to Mychael Danna signing those. So we'll be giving those away.
Nice.
Are there any runner-up or consolation prizes for the guy that came in second? Just curious. We'll think about that, and maybe we'll have an answer for you next week. We'll see you then.